So why play that? It needs to be understood clearly understood that there's games going on, family. We don't all see it, but trust me, there's games going on. So if we don't see the truth from the lie, if we can't take the time to investigate, to make known to ourselves, how can we define? Somebody will always be shaping our reality. We'll always be moved by the next advert, by the next logo.
Freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. 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 Fight the power.
In this game theory view of the world,
what people really wanted in such an atomized world was the free market, not politics. Not politics.
Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. Some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted. They failed both the test of our national values and the test of humanity. The United States of America offers a sincere apology to those of our citizens who were subjected to these experiments.
What is it that we can both recognize? The ultimate political goal at the heart of our age is the idea of individual freedom.
I believe that freedom is the future of all humanity.
You're a disgrace. Disgrace.
Molly Phillips hopes her worst nightmare never happens again. To make sure, she had a new device called the Vera chip, a computer chip about the size of a grain of rice, placed under her skin.
If I had the chip, I could travel all over the world. That would give me the freedom of living a life without bounds.
It's a radio frequency identification, or RFID tag. The same technology used to tag animals to help reunite a pet with its owner. RFID has now won Food and Drug Administration approval for use in humans.
but it occurs to me I've got them in my dogs. Why wouldn't I have them in small children too?
An Ohio company has become the first American firm to implant silicon chips in employees to track their every move. Don't be surprised if your company asks to tag you.
Then there is the issue of privacy and whether employers might start demanding employees get the chip implanted as a form of ID.
In the 1980s, you take a polygraph test to get a job. In the 1990s, it was drug testing. A little later on, it was reading your email. And then each step along the line, you start to ask the question, is the law going to create any zones of safety?
Finished. We now have over 60 hospitals that have agreed to implement the system, so that time is nearing.
The way it works is it actually picks up and amplifies ambient electromagnetic energy from the reader devices. And if you have one of these things in your arm and you get within range of a powerful electromagnetic field, it can actually burn you.
When democracy equals empire. Get a dictionary. Open it to democracy. It says noun, Greek, demokratia, demos, people, and kratos, strength or power. That form of government in which the supreme power rests with the people. Every American president, whether Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal, speaks lovingly of democracy whenever the nation engages in some escapade abroad. When the U.S. invaded Iraq, it did so ostensibly to bring democracy to the Middle East. When it launches a raid in Grenada or rains death on a poor neighborhood in Panama, when it invaded Haiti in the last century ad infinitum, it always did so in the name of restoring democracy. What is this democracy of which they so blithely speak? We all have heard the term since our infancy, but who really knows what it means? I wanted to learn more about it, so I began to read one of the finest historians I know of, the great C.L.R. James, author of the groundbreaking The Black Jacobins, an influential study of the Haitian Revolution. Some years ago, James published a pamphlet titled Every Cook Can Govern, a study of democracy in ancient Greece. I found myself, as I often am when I read his stuff, blown away by what I learned. As the subtitle suggests, James looks at Greek history for the roots of the democratic idea and finds it, in some stages, truly democratic in ways we can hardly imagine. He writes, "Perhaps the most striking thing about Greek democracy was that the administration, and there were immense administrative problems, was organized upon the basis of what is known as sortition, or, more easily, selection by lot. The vast majority of Greek officials were chosen by a method which amounted to putting names into a hat and appointing the ones whose names came out. Now, the average C10 bureaucrat or labor member of parliament in Britain would fall in a fit if it were suggested to him that any worker selected at random could do the work he is doing. But that was precisely the guiding principle of Greek democracy. And this form of government is the government under which flourished the greatest civilization the world has ever known," he wrote. C.L.R. James, a revolutionary activist as well as a stellar historian, explains that in Greek, the term demokratia could be used interchangeably with the word isonomia, which meant equality. Using this system, the Greek city-state decided issues of war and peace, of taxation, of cultural affairs, and virtually every important affair of state. There was conscious seduction of power, and they so opposed tyranny that a man who, and yes, they tended to only allow the franchise to men, held public office could not serve again as a general rule. Their service was also subject to a time limit. Some historians have quite rightly noted that the Greek democracy rested upon slavery. That is true.
Elephantine Island in the Nile, Libya, and was a place of great sanctity in ancient times. Among the travelers who came here were the earliest European historians, the Greeks, men like Herodotus, brought up as he was in the classical tradition which regarded the various races of the known world as different but equal. The Greeks knew Egypt well and firmly believed that the original Egyptians were black people.
And I hope, they put this question on. It's a question in the back of everybody's head, Some people is further back than others collecting cobwebs. But is African Americans ever going to get reparations for slavery? I know y'all going to run around this question, dipping and dodging. So let's see how far y'all can get.
The Bible says we shall be and must be repairers of the breach. And a breach has occurred, and we have to acknowledge that. It's a breach that has resulted in inequality in opportunities for education, for health care, for housing, for employment. And so we must be mindful of that. But it's also a breach that has affected a lot of poor whites as well. We need to have a country which recognizes that there is an inequality of opportunity, and a president who's ready to challenge the interest groups, be they insurance companies or mortgage companies or defense contractors who are taking the money away from the people who need it. Yes, I am for repairing the breach. Yes, I am for reparations.
And all of a sudden, everything that they used to use to guide themselves no longer counts. The language that they used to speak can no longer be understood in the new world. The values that they used to guide their behavior are no longer workable. In fact, it gets them into trouble. The gods, the culture, the nature of the social relations, and all of the things that they used prior to meeting the walk no longer suffice. Now they must learn new values and new behaviors and new orientations.
I am anxious to sit with you, to dialogue with you. And if you can show me where I'm wrong, you don't have to ask me to apologize. I'll apologize right then and go before the world and beg your forgiveness.
We who are the heirs of the slave-owning and slave-trading nations of the past have to face the fact that our historic prosperity was built in large part on this atrocity.
There are more records of slave ships than one would dream. It seems inconceivable until you reflect that for 200 years ships sailed carrying cargoes of slaves.
Non-violent. In the face of the violence that we've been experiencing for the past 400 years,
is actually doing our people a disservice.
I want to hear you say your name. Your name is Toby. What's your name?
Gunther.